Hello there. I suppose for the last few weeks I've been pondering Stephen Seiler's stuff and also this hard easy training process and combining it with my experience of coaching ultra endurance cyclists like Jenny Graham, who just broke the round the world record over a year ago now, and other ultra endurance cyclists who've been quite successful. This is also reflects what I found when I used to run quite a lot, and I used to train with some quite good marathon runners, is that the hard and relatively very easy actually principle works really well and is in fact the most effective way of training. It's also perhaps the most enjoyable way of training, although the hard sessions aren't particularly much fun. The easy sessions allow you to explore or go out with your friends because the intensity isn't particularly critical. Well, I'll have to draw a little chart here. I suppose I'll start with what we call the power duration curve. So this is like time or duration, and that's power or pace. I think we all know that if you do something for a short period of time, you can go really fast or you can use a lot of power. And if you do something for a long time, you are quite slow, so you're not using as much power, and then there's various points in between. And the curve actually looks something like this. It sort of goes, and it has a flat bit and then goes down there, and somewhere around about here it changes slope, and that also coincides with your FTP, which functional threshold pace or critical pace, LT2, which is the second lactate turning point, or maximum lactate steady state. So these are all various terms, and it's also known as the second ventilator threshold if you were doing a lab test with a gas analyzer. That's the graph that most people look at, and that's the FTP threshold. The second lactate turning point is what is typically used to calculate training zones, and that's what people are focusing on because it's quite easy to think, oh, I've got a good functional threshold power and functional threshold pace. But that's not the most important parameter if you're doing events of 2 hours or longer. So if you wanted to run a marathon, or if you're doing a half marathon even, it's going to take you more than 2 hours, then the most important thing is what's known as the aerobic threshold, and that's also the most important thing for you doing your endurance training, so that you don't create extra damage and you recover from your harder sessions. I'll draw another little picture. Something called blood lactate is the amount of lactate in your blood, is how we measure, or how people in the lab measure, the various thresholds. It's quite difficult to measure your aerobic threshold without a lactate test, but what you can do is a good idea is if you can carry on a conversation at a given pace, then that's probably round about your aerobic threshold. You start to feel your breathing's a little bit faster, and you can't really carry on a conversation, or if you're on your own you could try reciting the alphabet or something like that, and that you sort of notice a change. Once you've been doing endurance sport for a few years, then it becomes second nature. But as a guide, until you get to that stage, then just practice, see whether you can talk or sing a song or something like that, and then you'll know you're there. So this is another graph. So the vertical axis is your blood lactate. As you go faster and faster, your blood lactate accumulates in your blood, and once you get round about a concentration of 4 millimolars of lactate in your blood, you start having to slow down. You can't really sustain that for very long, but up to that point you can sustain it for like an hour or more, and typically the 4 millimolars can be used as your second lactate turning point, where your FTP or your LT2 is, or your critical power or critical pace is. But nowadays people usually don't bother with a lab test to get those values, and I coach some professional athletes, and we don't do any lab testing nowadays. We just do, we use a power meter in cycling, and use tests over different durations to get a profile, a power duration profile, and that's good enough to get us these thresholds. But the important one is this aerobic threshold. So, and that is really trainable. So if you, I'll show a graph of some real data in the video, I'll get a screenshot. But you can, by training, spending a lot of time training around about that sort of speed or a bit less, you can make that move along. So basically that moves along, which means that you can go faster without incurring any build-up of lactate in your blood. What does that mean? Well, there's a bit of physiology in that you have two energy sources in your when you to activate your muscles. So when you're doing any endurance sport, and when you're going quite slowly, you use fatty acids. You burn fatty acids aerobically, and you don't create any blood lactate, and you can just keep going for an extremely long time until you basically your muscles just get tired, and you have to stop. And as you build up more and more endurance, that can be like well, Jenny was cycling for 16 hours a day when she was doing the round the world record, and she did that for several months. So it's phenomenal how you can train your body to sustain endurance-based effort. But after this aerobic threshold, you start to use carbohydrate sources that are stored in your muscles called muscle glycogen, and also some stored in your liver, glycogen as well. And a byproduct of that process is this lactate, and it gradually starts to accumulate and it gets reused to give yourself more energy. So it is quite an effective system. But once you go to that speed of your functional threshold power, your critical pace, then you can't really sustain it for very long, and it runs out because you've only got a limited amount of that, whereas you've got loads of fat. Even a really skinny person, like a top elite male marathon runner, has plenty of fat to last for hours and hours, and probably days before they start suffering any ill effects. So if you can use fat, you can last a long time. If you have to use your glycogen, your carbohydrate stores, then you can't last very long. So what you want to do is improve this from where you are now by training at a bit below your aerobic threshold. Move this so that you can go faster and faster, and actually as you do more and more of it, you'll actually be able to go further and further as well without getting the same level of muscle fatigue. But it's also useful to be able to go faster and faster and also get rid of some of this lactate, because in most endurance sport you have to go uphill, and also what you find is that you can make quite big gains by doing harder work as well as doing easy work. It means everything gets faster if you get faster at the faster stuff. So if you can also improve these points along the curve, improve your critical pace, your functional threshold pace, then that's great. And that's really what the polarized training approach is, that you work to build your higher speeds by doing hard interval sessions around about anaerobic threshold, and do easy work at around your aerobic threshold. And what seems to be the case is that you can do a lot of work below your aerobic threshold without compromising the recovery from the hard sessions. So some people can manage 3 hard sessions a week, some people can only manage 2. In fact, most people can only manage 2, that's the most normal thing I've found. And some people can only manage 1 really hard session a week. So it's important to find out what works for you and stick with that. So I would start with 2 hard sessions. Pick 2 days in the week where you're going to do some really hard work. Good sessions are like 3 or 4 by 8 minutes as hard as you can go, with a 2 minutes recovery, and the idea would be to do the whole of the 4 or 3 8-minute efforts at the same speed, and that should be round about your critical pace, your 10-kilometer pace if you're running, or your functional threshold power if you're cycling. So about the pace you can last for 40 to 60 minutes. And that's it. So if you want to have a look on our website, I've written an article about this, and I've also written an article on how to use what's known as the 5 pace system to calculate your interval sessions. That's really useful. It gives you a nice variety of sessions to choose from. So you might do a hard session on a Wednesday and a Saturday if you're doing 2 sessions, and then all you have to do after that is you fill in with as much aerobic training as you can, as much time below your aerobic threshold as you can, but without making yourself too tired to do the hard sessions. So you prioritise the hard sessions and then work to build up the volume of your training that can be limited by your available time probably, or if you're lucky enough to have lots of available time, then limited by your energy levels. So hopefully all that makes sense. Here's the picture again. You're trying to improve that by doing lots of training around your aerobic threshold at a conversational pace, and you're also trying to do this by improve this lot by doing 2 or 3 hard sessions each week and then filling it in with your lots of training at that low level. And so therefore it's pretty simple, hard and easy, but make sure your easy sessions are easy and your hard sessions are hard. I hope you liked this video and found it interesting, and if so, please subscribe and let me know what other things you might be interested in, or if you've got any questions. It'd be great to have some sort of discussion, either in the comments or send me an email or get in touch some other way. It's great to hear from you, and I work best when I'm interacting with people. Okay, thanks for watching and hopefully see you again soon. Bye.